At Christmas dinner, my parents said, "Your sister's family is moving in with you." I just smiled and said nothing. A week later, they found out I had already sold my house 6 months ago, and it shocked them. Well, let's go. My name is Maribel, and I'm 32 years old. This whole mess started when I got a phone call from my mom 2 weeks before Christmas. I hadn't talked to my family in over 6 months, so hearing her sweet voice on the phone was already weird as hell. "Maribel, honey, I'm calling to invite you to our Christmas party this year," she said, and I could practically hear her fake smile through the phone. "We're inviting all the relatives, your aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. Raina really wants to see you too. You know, you two should spend more time together since you're sisters. Raina is my older sister. She's 34, married to this guy named Colby, and they have a 7-year-old daughter named Lenny." "I don't know, Mom," I said. "It's been a while since we all got together." "Oh, but you have to come. I'm making all your favorite dishes. You remember that chicken casserole you loved when you were little? And we're even getting out Grandma's good porcelain, the set we only use for big holidays." That's when alarm bells started going off in my head. My mom never used Grandma's porcelain unless something major was happening. The last time I saw those plates was at my cousin's wedding 3 years ago. "Okay," I said slowly. "I guess I can come." "Perfect. We'll see you Christmas Eve at 6. Don't bring anything, just yourself." After I hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. Something was definitely up. My family doesn't do anything nice without wanting something in return. That's just how they are. So, I did what any normal person would do. I stalked my sister on Facebook. Raina's page was public, which was typical for her. She loved showing off her life online. I scrolled through her recent posts and found exactly what I was looking for. Photos from 2 weeks ago showing moving boxes scattered around her apartment. Some of the boxes had labels written in Raina's messy handwriting. Clothes, books, Lenny's toys, dishes. In the comments, her friend Jessica had asked, "What's all this about?" And Raina replied, "We're moving soon. It's going to be a surprise for everyone." Kept scrolling. In another post from a few days later, Raina was talking about schools in the area near my house. She was asking about enrollment procedures and class sizes. One of her mom friends commented that the elementary school near my neighborhood was supposed to be really good. "That's great to know," Raina had replied. "Lenny might be going there next semester." I screenshotted everything and sat back in my chair. These people thought they were so smart, but they were about as subtle as a brick through a window. See, here's the thing they didn't know. 6 months ago, I took a transfer to our branch in Aspen Creek, Colorado, where 3 of my college friends lived. It was a great opportunity. Better pay, lower cost of living, and a chance to start fresh. I sold my house in 2 weeks. Got a good price for it too, better than I expected. With that money, I bought a smaller but nicer house in Colorado. My mortgage payments went down by almost $400 a month. But here's the kicker. I never told my family about any of this. Why would I? We barely talked anyway. I spent the next 2 weeks before Christmas wondering what exactly they were planning. I had a pretty good idea, but I wanted to see how far they'd go with it. Christmas Eve came, and I drove the 5 hours back to my old town. I parked outside my parents' house and took a deep breath. The place looked exactly the same. Same ugly wreath on the door, same crooked Christmas lights Dad never fixed properly. I walked in and was immediately hit by the smell of Mom's cooking and the sound of about 15 people talking loudly. Everyone was there. Mom's sisters, Dad's brother and his wife, 3 cousins, and of course Raina with her family. "Maribel!" Mom practically shrieked when she saw me. She hugged me like I'd just returned from war or something. "You look so good." "Doesn't she look good, everyone?" A chorus of relatives agreed that yes, I looked good. Raina came over and hugged me too, which was weird because we're not huggers. Dinner was the usual chaos. Too many people around one table, everyone talking over each other, kids running around. But I noticed something different. Everyone kept looking at me expectantly, like they were waiting for something to happen. Then, right after Mom brought out her famous apple pie, Dad stood up and tapped his wine glass with a fork. Everyone, I have an announcement to make." The room got quiet. Even the kids stopped running around. As you all know, Reina and her family have been renting that little apartment for the past 3 years. Well, we've decided as a family that it's time for them to have more space. I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my face neutral. So next week, Reina, Colby, and Lenny are going to move into Maribel's house. Isn't that wonderful? The room erupted in cheers and congratulations. Reina was crying happy tears. Colby was shaking Dad's hand. Lenny was jumping up and down. All eyes turned to me. I could feel everyone waiting for my reaction. I shrugged and smiled. Okay. Mom and Dad looked relieved. They probably thought I was being agreeable. You'll need to prepare 2 rooms for them this week, Mom continued. Reina and Colby can take the master bedroom, and Lenny can have the guest room. You don't mind sleeping on the couch for a while until we figure out other arrangements, do you? Sure, I said, still smiling. I spent the rest of the evening playing along. I listened to Reina talk about Lenny's new school. I nodded when Colby talked about his commute to work. I even offered to help them pack. When it was time to leave, I told everyone I was staying the night at my parents' house. Just like old times, I said. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I almost felt bad for what was about to happen. Almost. The next morning I woke up early and had breakfast with my parents. They were in such good moods, talking about how nice it would be to have Reina and Lenny nearby again. You're such a good sister, Mom said, pouring me more coffee. Reina was so worried you might say no. Why would I say no? Asked, buttering my toast. Well, some people get attached to having their own space. But family comes first, right? Right, I agreed. I hugged them goodbye around 10 o'clock and promised to call Reina later to discuss the moving details. Then I got in my car and started driving. But instead of taking the exit toward my old house, I kept driving past the city limits, past the county line, all the way to the interstate that would take me back to Colorado. As I drove, I started remembering everything that had led up to this moment. The whole thing had been so obvious once I put the pieces together. It started right after I bought my house 2 years ago. Reina had come over to see it, and I could tell she was jealous. She kept walking around saying things like, "This is so much space for just one person, and it must be lonely living in such a big house by yourself." Then she started making comments to our parents. I heard her tell Mom, "It's really unfair that Maribel gets this whole house while we're stuck in that tiny apartment. Houses are meant for families, not single people." At the time I thought she was just being Reina. She'd always been jealous of anything I had that she didn't. But looking back, I realized she'd been planning this for months. The comments got more frequent after that. Every family gathering, Reina would bring up my house. She'd talk about how the school district was so good, how there was a hospital nearby, how the neighborhood was perfect for families with children. Lenny would love having a backyard to play in, she'd say, looking right at me. I started avoiding family events because I was tired of hearing about it. That's probably why I hadn't talked to them in 6 months. But Reina wasn't stupid. She knew she couldn't just ask me to let them move in. I would have said no immediately. So she got our parents involved. The Christmas party was definitely planned as a trap. They invited all those relatives because they thought I wouldn't refuse in front of everyone. They figured I'd be too embarrassed to cause a scene. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning my own exit strategy months before they came up with theirs. The truth was, I'd been unhappy in that city for a long time. My job was boring. I had no social life, and most of my friends had moved away after college. The only thing keeping me there was inertia. Then my company started offering transfers to different branches. They had offices in 12 states and were desperate to get people to relocate. They were even offering moving bonuses and help with real estate. I spent weeks researching different cities, looking at cost of living, job opportunities, weather, everything. Colorado kept coming up as the best option. Plus, my college friends Sierra, Bennett, and Hallie all lived in Denver now. 6 months ago I finally made the decision. I applied for the transfer, put my house on the market, and started looking for a new place. The house sold faster than I expected. Some young couple fell in love with it and paid the asking price. I used that money to buy a smaller but much nicer house in a suburb outside Denver. My mortgage went from $1,800 a month to $1,400. The best part was that nobody knew about any of this. I'd been working remotely for the past 6 months while I got settled, so even my coworkers didn't know I'd moved. My old neighbors probably wondered where I went, but I'd never been close with any of them. I just packed up and left one weekend. I'd been planning to tell my family eventually, but there was never a good time. And honestly, I didn't think they'd care that much. It wasn't like we talked regularly anyway. But now I was glad I'd kept it secret. If Raina had known I'd sold the house, she would have found some other way to manipulate the situation. I stopped for gas somewhere in Kansas and checked my phone. No missed calls yet, but it was still early. I wondered what Raina and Colby were doing right now. Probably packing their last few boxes, excited about their new life in my house. Lenny was probably sad about leaving her friends but excited about having her own room. Part of me felt bad for her. She was just a kid, and this wasn't her fault. But her parents had brought this on themselves. I got back in the car and kept driving. The highway was mostly empty, just me and a few truckers. I put on a podcast and tried not to think about what was going to happen when they showed up at my house. Actually, it wasn't my house anymore. The new owners, Mr. and Mrs. Kepler, seemed like nice people. They had 2 teenage kids and were excited about moving into a bigger place. I hoped they wouldn't be too freaked out when my family showed up claiming to live there. I'd left my contact information with them just in case any mail came for me, but I hadn't mentioned anything about crazy relatives who might show up unannounced. By late afternoon, I was crossing the Colorado state line. The mountains were visible in the distance, and I felt myself relaxing for the first time in weeks. This was home now. I pulled into my driveway just as the sun was setting. My house was smaller than the old one, but it was mine. No family drama, no guilt trips, no Raina complaining about how unfair her life was. I grabbed my overnight bag and went inside. The house still smelled like the vanilla candles I'd been burning before I left. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. I made myself dinner and settled in to watch Netflix. My phone was sitting on the coffee table, and I kept glancing at it, waiting for it to ring. I didn't have to wait long. Exactly 1 week after Christmas, my phone started ringing at 8 in the morning. I was having coffee on my back porch, enjoying the mountain view, when Mom's name flashed on my screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello. Maribel, what the hell is going on?" Mom was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What do you mean? There are strangers in your house. Complete strangers who are telling us they own the place. They're threatening to call the police on us." I took a sip of my coffee. "Oh, that. Yeah, those are the new owners. I sold the house 6 months ago." Dead silence on the other end. "This is impossible. You can't just sell a house without telling anyone." "Actually, I can. It was my house." Dad grabbed the phone from her. "This is insane. You deliberately abandoned your family and ran off to God knows where. If you had bothered talking to me more than twice a year, you'd have known I got a job in another state." Hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again. This time it was Raina. "You did this on purpose," she shrieked before I could even say hello. "You set us up. You sold your house behind our backs. Colby and I already gave notice to our landlord. We have nowhere to go." "That sounds like a you problem. And a Colby problem. Are you kidding me right now? We're family. Family doesn't usually try to steal each other's houses. We weren't stealing anything. Mom and Dad said you agreed." "I never agreed to anything." I smiled and nodded because I knew I didn't live there anymore. Raina started crying. "We had it all planned out. We were going to live there for a few years and save money so we could buy our own place. Now we're homeless." "No, you're not homeless. You can stay with Mom and Dad until you find a new apartment. They have plenty of room. We can't live with our parents, we're adults. Then act like adults and find your own place to live." I hung up again. For the next 3 hours my phone didn't stop ringing. Mom called 6 more times. Dad called 4 times. Raina called twice. Even Colby called once to tell me I was ruining his daughter's life. Then the extended family started calling. My Aunt Carla was the first. "Maribel, honey, what's going on? Your mother is hysterical. Raina's family was planning to move into my house without asking me. I sold the house 6 months ago. But sweetie, their family. You should have talked to them first. Your sister has a little girl to think about. Lenny needs stability." Lenny was perfectly stable in their apartment. "This is Raina's mess, not mine. You're being very selfish, Maribel." I hung up on her too. My cousin Brett called next. "Dude, what's wrong with you? Raina's got nowhere to live. She can find another apartment. She already gave notice on her old place, and it's winter. Do you want Lenny to be homeless?" "Lenny won't be homeless. There are thousands of rentals in that city. But they don't have first month's rent and security deposit saved up. They spent their savings on moving supplies." Again, not my problem. He hung up on me this time. After that, I turned my phone off. I needed some peace and quiet to think. The truth was, I wasn't surprised by any of this. My family had always been manipulative and entitled. They just usually weren't this obvious about it. What shocked me was how angry they were. Did they really think I was going to let them take over my house? Did they think I was that much of a pushover? I spent the rest of the day unpacking some boxes I'd been putting off. Around dinner time, I turned my phone back on and found 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most of them were variations of the same thing. "Call me back. We need to talk. How could you do this to your family?" But there was one text from Raina that made me laugh out loud. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed Lenny's childhood." 4 months went by without a word from any of them. I figured they'd finally accepted reality and moved on with their lives. During those 4 months, I started dating my college friend Bennett. We'd reconnected when I moved to Colorado, and what started as casual coffee dates turned into something serious pretty quickly. Bennett was everything I'd been looking for in a partner: kind, funny, stable, and best of all, no crazy family drama. His parents were normal people who minded their own business. We'd been talking about moving in together, maybe even getting engaged. Life was good. Then Mom called again. "Maribel, we've been thinking," she began. "We've decided that Raina and Colby should move to Colorado too. They can start over there near you." I almost dropped the phone. "Absolutely not. But you have that big house all to yourself again. And Lenny would love the mountains. First of all, I don't live alone anymore. I live with my boyfriend. Second, even if I did live alone, the answer would still be no." "Your boyfriend? Since when do you have a boyfriend?" "Since 4 months ago. We're actually talking about getting married." There was a long pause. "You did this on purpose," Mom said finally. "You got a boyfriend just to keep Raina's family out of your house. You're insane." "I got a boyfriend because I wanted one. Everything in my life doesn't revolve around Raina. Don't you dare call me insane. You've been plotting against your family from the beginning." I hung up and immediately called Bennett. "They found me," I told him when he answered. "My family, they want Raina to move here now. They're completely delusional." Bennett was quiet for a moment. "Maybe we should install that security system we talked about." "You think they'd actually come here?" "Maribel, these people drove to your old house and tried to move in without permission. I don't think distance is going to stop them." Bennett was right to be worried. A week after Mom's crazy phone call, my old boss from my previous job called me. "Maribel, I have to tell you something weird happened today. Your mother showed up at the office. She was crying and asking for your new address. She said she hadn't been able to reach you for weeks and was worried something had happened to you." My stomach dropped. "Please tell me you didn't give it to her." "I'm sorry, I did." She seemed genuinely upset, and I thought maybe there was a family emergency. "There's no emergency. She's been harassing me for months." "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." After I hung up, I immediately called my other former co-workers to warn them not to give out any information about me. But it was too late. The damage was done. I told Bennett what happened, And we spent that weekend installing a full security system. Motion sensors, door and window alarms, and cameras covering every angle of the house. Bennett also convinced me to get a doorbell camera so we could see who was coming before they even knocked. 2 days later, Aunt Carla called me. "Maribel, your parents and Reina are planning to come see you. They bought train tickets for this weekend. They're really worried about you." "I'm not in an abusive relationship, Carla. I'm in a happy, healthy relationship with a man who respects my boundaries. They just want to make sure you're okay." If they wanted to make sure I was okay, they would have called me instead of showing up uninvited at my workplace and stalking me. "Don't be so dramatic. They're your family. Family doesn't stalk family, Carla." I hung up and immediately booked a cabin in the mountains for the weekend. Bennett and I packed our bags and left Friday afternoon. Saturday morning, I was drinking coffee on the cabin's deck when my phone buzzed with a notification from the security app. Someone was at my front door. I opened the app and watched the live feed. My parents, Reina, Colby, and little Lenny were standing on my porch. Dad was holding what looked like a toolkit. They knocked for about 5 minutes. Then Dad pulled out what looked like a lock-picking kit and started working on my front door. We watched him struggle with the lock for another few minutes. Then the alarm started going off, and within 10 minutes, 2 police cars pulled up. My phone rang immediately. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello. Is this Maribel Hayes?" a male voice asked. "This is Officer Martinez with the Denver Police Department. We're at your house right now with some people who claim to be your relatives." "Yes," I said. "I can see you on my security camera. They're saying you invited them to visit but forgot to leave them keys." In the background I could hear Mom yelling, "Confirm it. Tell them we're family." "Officer, these people have been stalking and harassing me for months. I absolutely did not invite them. They got my address from my former workplace without my permission." "So you're saying they're trespassing?" "Yes. And my father was just attempting to break into my house with lockpicking tools." "Okay. We're going to need them to come down to the station." I hung up and watched through the cameras as my entire family was loaded into police cars. Lenny was crying, and Reina was screaming at the officers about family rights. The next day, Aunt Carla called me again. "Maribel, your family is furious. They drove all that way for nothing, spent the night in some terrible motel, and got fined by the police." "Good. Your parents are saying they're disowning you. They don't want you to be part of the family anymore." "That's the best news I've heard all year." "How can you say that? They're your parents. Parents don't try to break into their children's houses. Parents don't stalk their children. Parents don't try to steal their children's property. They weren't trying to steal anything. They just wanted Reina's family to have a better life, at your expense, without your consent. That's called stealing." Carla hung up on me this time. 2 months later, she called me back with an update. "Reina and Colby found a new apartment. They're doing fine. Your parents are still not speaking to you. Don't you miss your family at all?" "No. My family is Bennett now. And our friends. People who actually care about me instead of what they can get from me." "What about when you get married? Won't you want your parents there?" "Actually," I said, smiling, "Bennett and I are engaged now. And no, I won't be inviting my parents or Reina to the wedding." "That's really sad, Maribel." "What's sad," I said calmly, "is that it took me 32 years to realize DNA doesn't make someone family. Love and respect do." After that conversation, I blocked all of their numbers. I was done. Bennett and I got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with just our close friends. His parents walked me down the aisle since mine weren't invited. It was the happiest day of my life. Sometimes people ask if I ever regret cutting off my family. The answer is no, not even for a second. My life is peaceful now. I have a husband who loves me, friends who support me, and a job I enjoy. I don't have to deal with guilt trips or manipulation or people trying to take advantage of me. I found out through mutual friends that Reina and Colby are still renting apartments and complaining about money. Lenny is doing fine in school. My parents are still bitter about the whole thing. But that's not my problem anymore. The funny thing is they probably still think they were the victims in this whole situation. They probably tell people their ungrateful daughter abandoned them for no reason. Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth, and that's enough for me. Sometimes late at night, I sit on the porch of our home in Aspen Creek, watching the lights flicker in the valley below. The mountains stand tall and quiet, like they're keeping all the secrets I left behind. I think about that Christmas dinner sometimes. The forced smiles, the porcelain plates, the room full of people who didn't know I'd already taken control of my own story. If I've learned anything, it's this. You can't build peace out of guilt. You can't buy love by letting people take pieces of you. Family isn't supposed to drain you. Family is supposed to protect you. So no, I don't regret a single thing. I saved myself. I built a new life from the wreckage they tried to bury me under. And every morning, when sunlight spills over the Rockies and Bennett hands me a cup of coffee with that sleepy smile of his, I remember what freedom tastes like. It tastes like vanilla candles, quiet mornings, and peace no one can take from me. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is realize you don't owe anyone access to your life. Not even family. Especially not family who only sees you as a resource to be exploited. Because when you finally close that door, you open the one that truly matters, the one that leads back to yourself.